Welcome to the second session of today's meeting, where we try to sort of follow up a bit on what was discussed in the previous panel, but the focus will be more on open data usage for actual commercial products, services, and what are the limitations and potential risks there. Meaning the panel setup is also a bit different, even though there are people here who I would very comfortably actually place in the researcher community as well, but they, as always, talented people wear many hats. But let me briefly introduce the panel. Right next to me is Veiko Berendsen from Statistics Estonia. He's the data governance expert there, working on essentially and also making data available and improving data quality in order to increase data usage. Then we have Andres Raeste, Senior Vice President at Nortal, responsible for public sector, essentially projects and services. Pleased to have you here. Then we have Kristjan Lemsalu, Head of Data Unit from Estonian Information System Authority. We'll share the latest news, hopefully, on new Estonian Open Data Portal. And then we have Dan Bogdanov from Cybernetica, Chief Scientific Officer and also Director of the Information Security Research Institute within Cybernetica. Also a PhD in computer science. So actually I thought that there were a couple of interesting questions that popped up in the previous panel, and some of you already said that you might want to follow up with comments on your side. But let's start first with a very general quick take on your organization's usage of open data, in particular from the point of view of services and commercial products. Do you see that open data is usable for these particular things, and are you sort of considering yourself or your organization as a client of open data in your everyday practices? So please, who wants to start? Maybe Veiko then first.
Yeah, Statistics Estonia is more a producer of the open data than the consumer of the open data. We have 1,924 dimensional data sets, which are basically the statistical tables available. And in whole, these are the current tables. We are constantly amending them, and more than 2,600 old tables or multidimensional data sets, as we call them, and generally more than 4,000 data cubes, and these are all the official statistics available for everybody, and we are producing them. We are using more data from more than 100 of Estonian state registers to produce data. We call them administrative data registers, and but what we of course lack for the making statistics is open data we can trust, and which is, as we call them, objective. Official statistics must be objective, as you know.
From my side, roughly a year ago, I would have said that we're also more in the business of making open data available, producing the infrastructure and services necessary for it. But the last year and a half have a little bit changed the game. So now we have a large number globally of projects that are utilizing generative AI on top of open data, that are producing entirely new type of public services. But this has been changing so fast that in reality it's all of us are puzzling where will we be in a year from now.
Kristjan.
Yes, hello everyone. Estonian Information System Authority are providing a technical platform, Estonian Open Data Portal. So we are not so much using, but more providing the platform for everyone, for you guys, and of course for Estonian statistics, for opening a lot of data sets and so on.
At Cybernetica, we mostly, when we develop information systems for governments, we make use of classifiers and standards. These are, strictly speaking, not data, but they are metadata. However, our surveillance systems department that builds maritime security solutions, they use quite a lot of maps. And that's where we rely on good quality data because we build radars and navigation. We used to also build navigation support systems and we needed even more maps. Now it's mostly like radio and coastal things happening. However, our business, possibly similarly to Nortal, is now in the land of building pipelines for making data products, various kinds. And because Cybernetica is focused on securing societies, when we are interested in making these data product pipelines secure.
May I add something?
Please.
We're at the Statistics Estonia, we're producing in the year more than 2,800 indicators, statistical indicators. And these indicators come from the statistical studies or programs, as we call them, from collection to producing to dissemination. And now we are more turning towards from studies, as it was in the title, from studies towards the products or services as it is. And we have, of course, the products like dashboards for the different sectors and things like this. But still, it's not very clear what is this data product, what we can call it, what is the data service. We just conceptualizing by ourselves, which we are. But generally, others may think that something completely different behind these concepts.
Okay, very good. I presume Christian has also maybe a bit similar question, but I would direct it first to Andres and Dan.
Andres, what are you doing?
The earlier panel actually also talked about this, but we do a lot of business in the West. So our largest business is actually in Germany these days, then in North America, then in the very rich Middle East, and so forth. So the Estonia is this innovative small hub, but the volume in reality is in a more traditional Europe. And the one very significant difference that we constantly observe in the Western Europe is the nature of the data that is available, that is possibly to be used for the different type of services. The data products are let's say, what is the maturity level of those data products? So are we talking about that somebody has already aggregated raw data into some sort of opinionated data product that let's say, you cannot add too much smartness into it anymore, or somebody has already done that business, then what is the business model for the entity that is then producing a service on top of it? Being simply the channel for making that information available, unfortunately, that doesn't have too much added value. Like most of the added value in the industry is actually aggregating data in a very smart way. So here in Estonia, there is an interesting ecosystem that we are exchanging raw data. This is super rare in the rest of the world. So that also creates a lot of dilemmas for everybody interested in utilizing the data, that if somebody already aggregates that data, then what is the business model for everybody else? So whenever we in the Western world, when we observe or are part of creation of some type of, let's say, services that are utilizing data or open data or in whatever format, then typically the better service is the lower level of the data that is actually using. And I would say that the biggest added value that, let's say, companies like us or Cybernetica can actually do is to help the society navigate towards what is the data infrastructure or ecosystem overall that needs to be in place in order to produce the right type of data, and who are those entities that are creating different types of like aggregate data products or derivate data products, and what are those markets that are possible to actually be established based on this. So lots of people don't actually realize, but for example, in Estonia, when we have the free energy market, that's also data products. That's a data market. That's data economy in that sense. So what do you need for it? You need certain type of digital public infrastructure, certain type of regulations, all that vast ecosystem that is capable of moving data in a certain format. And that's super rare.
Actually, I agree with you that we have to transform raw data into usable outputs. I mean that you have to make or convert reports and studies into dashboards that Veiko was saying, that you have to produce something for in open data portal that you can really check and the data, raw data has to be usable. Sometimes the raw data isn't actually usable and it's quite old.
But done. Let's say there were already a couple of definitions here: raw data, more mature models. You built your products using open data, depending on the level of maturity and how do you mitigate the risks there.
No, but I want to come back to definitions. If I read Veiko's question correctly, then I think many of us here are using the words incorrectly.
Guilty.
So again, some of these things are marketing speak. I'll be very honest about it. There's the discipline of proper data processing is old. There's official statistics. That's its own world, which Veiko comes from. There are a lot of these commercial things. There are things that Gartner speaks about. And data products, last year there were challenges and procurements where governments were asking to build pipelines for building data products, various kinds. So they're using the words. And the thing with commercial business is if your customer starts using a word, then you can try and go and explain to them about standards and proper terminology, or you can say that, okay, you're asking for this, let us now let the sun shine on our product this way, and this is exactly what we are selling you now.
Exactly.
But the risk is, again, Cybernetica's focus is these same ecosystems that Andres mentions. Our sort of expertise is in trying to make, let's say, carve out some of the more complex pieces there that need to be shaped in very peculiar ways for people to accept the risks of building those data systems. So we want some things to be built, but properly and securely.
Okay, so actually my interpretation of your answer is no.
What was the original question?
Are you, let's say, different levels of maturities of data? I would say, okay, let's use it that way. Raw data, someone has added value, aggregated it, made it available. On that scale, do you actually use this type of data, or are you comfortable in using this type of data as a core ingredient in your products? That you probably don't, given that what you just said.
Some of our core business is similar to Nortal's, building these moving data from point X to point Y. So again, open data is not big in our business at this point, and this comes down to the economics. The business models of open data, there are so few people who are willing to pay for this, or sort of any sort of data services. Even if like Statistics Estonia would start acting as a big data hub, then finding the customers for this who are willing to pay actual money is a complex question. Thus, economically, yeah, I have to say that, yeah, currently it's not a core business. It's usually a commodity, something that, I don't know, read John Locke, the government's supposed to take care of it.
Yeah, we are government in this sense, and we're taking care of it. and what we are doing concerning also the open data and understanding of data, we took a task 2 or 3 years ago to look on the all Estonian registers. We don't know exact number of them. This is a problem, of course, but it's more that question of definition, which is the information system, which is the register or database, as we call it, andmekogu. But let's say there is 250. Let's say it this way, and we took a task to describe these data, these information systems registers. And some of them have 10,000 of variables or characteristics, and others are only 100. And we're describing them, creating data dictionaries and business vocabularies, making them understandable, semantically understandable, and then searchable, and then perhaps usable for AI to look something, to use these dictionaries somehow to make better answers to the bad questions. But still, we done it, and we want agencies to take control over these business vocabularies and terminology, more or less, and start to create their data products, information systems, and services using more business-like understanding in these creations. We have some success, but of course it's a huge task, and nobody knows really who is willing to pay for all this metadata, because it's very difficult. And as Evelyn said in the earliest session, the time is most valuable variable. Of course, the spatial variable is in the place. Then we doing this subject matter variables, but time variable, we are not very good in describing time in these data sets and registers and things. And this is really the task for us to do something better description about the time, because the user want very much what kind is it timeliness? Is it old data? Is it currently, can I use it? From which duration and so on?
Okay, if I now sort of interpret that, you're basically saying that you take these raw data sets, you actually add value with this metadata, you link them, you make semantic searches possible, meaning you essentially build something that is more than single individual data sets, but you still build it with the hope that someone will now actually see real sort of value it, build it, and essentially they will come in a sense.
Yeah, we can't do record linkage or data linkage without the semantics, but it's impossible. And also a time. Yeah, basically. Yes.
Okay, so you build it with the hope that actually this will now maybe change the equation a bit, meaning that, let's say, companies or let's say the research community is mostly here, will start to actually see more value in those particular data sets or in this whole infrastructure.
We hope so, yeah.
Okay. Does that somehow a bit change the equation for you, Dan, for example, when you think of that actually the baseline, the infrastructure based on which you could build these types of products is now improved, value is added, you could do something more with it?
If I were building, let's say, there's a difference. If there was someone, a startup maker, if there was Evgeny Kabanov from Bolt here right now, he would say that, yes, he uses some of this data, possibly. Maybe his data team would say that. Again, I'll be very honest, at Cybernetic, we are not the ones who do the business value out of data as a core activity. We need to understand it because our customers need to get the value out of it. Why are they building the infrastructure otherwise? But we always learn like a chameleon, we change colors, depend on what is the thing that our partners need to build, and then we help them build it. So again, I might not be the best person to ask this question.
Very good. I'm going to ask it from Andres then. What you just heard, is it actually something similar which you are building for other governments at the moment? So that is actually part of your product which you are building for them? Or is it something based on which you can actually sell your different types of, let's say, data products on a bit better?
I mean, fundamentally, like all of the public service digitalization and so forth comes down to utilizing more and more information to like add value to the service delivery. So it's just a question of how. there's a couple of different disciplines or doctrines in the world how to do it. So here in this ecosystem here, or overall, I would call the like European thinking, which comes down to the once only principle, basically, that let's build a interoperable system of registries and information, which and let's say that is a publicly agreed in regulations that how that all works, what information is exchanged, and so forth, and that's how we augment the services, improve the service value to the citizen or the businesses, and so forth. But there's also some other aspects how to do it. So there's a lot of societies that don't have this type of infrastructure available, and they have had to innovate utilizing, let's say, different forms of data from a non-official sources. So lots of that innovation, by the way, has been rather interesting to observe that when different global crises have happened, for example, the Ukrainian crisis started when the migration to Europe started, and different European countries worldwide built up services to identify people utilizing, I would say, interesting ways that we would never consider otherwise. For example, trying to figure out that the person who says who that person is, for example, is there some sort of probabilistic evidence related to it, so that otherwise would never be accepted. So that is a good, let's say, like showcase of how to pull in other types of data from different non-official sources or from wider sense to build up some sort of a different service value. But also, like, for example, if we look at the statistics board that typically also produces, not data that is like you can augment other services directly with it, but it is some sort of an general hygiene level information that can augment your entire policy thinking, your entire decision-making process, your entire strategy, and so forth. So also there's a lot of governments that only can utilize this type of data to augment the services. So especially in the West, we'll see a lot of this in the North America, in the UK, for example, that if they think about data exchange, they mostly think about moving this type of data between the authorities and what can they do to utilize that data to augment the services, because they don't have this other part.
Okay, done.
What's the end game, though? Once only principle is not value by itself. The value comes from letting public servants go, so you would reduce your government spend, right? Or again, if we talk about tax offices are the only places where government actually brings money in. Like most of the money comes from tax offices. There's a value. If the tax office is very efficient user of data, it's like distinct value. How do you define value in what you just explained?
I think value is something that is a bit of this business password. There is even a Wikipedia article about this. Like if you put in like a business value, then this is something that doesn't exist. We need to look sector by sector. Like in a healthcare, like OECD considers healthcare to be that that we look at cost efficiency, the accessibility of it, longevity or whatever different type of metrics. So that, like all across the government, there isn't one single KPI. So tax authority looks at, for example, on a wider sense, like collection efficiency, the trust, and those parameters. So, like utilization of data definitely can improve different type of KPIs, but that is a very use case specific thing.
Mm-hmm. Precisely, yeah.
Okay, Christian, I mean, based on what was discussed here, I mean, if you build this new portal, make it available, I mean, obviously the benefit, or I mean, you need to justify the costs related to that, which probably are best justified by demonstrating actually that this is being used, heavily being used, not only being downloaded by researchers and stuff is being published based on that, But actually, there are commercial products that run partially on open data. We can think of, I mean, there are a couple of cases in Estonia where you have, let's say, certain business intelligence type of data products that actually use registry data that is open, simply repackaging it and then selling it on the market partially. But when you do that, you build that portal, do you actually get this feedback from businesses as well that you purposefully set it up like that you would maximize the usage actually in commercial products as well? Because let's be honest, I mean, that actually introduces a lot of responsibility. It's not going to be simply a question whether a data owner pushes some dead data once a year there, then it's not usable. You cannot build a product or anything like that. Is that specifically designed into that portal as well, or that's still in the pie in the sky?
Actually, it's really good question. We hope we can launch the new portal in April. I think Ott was talking about the feedback. It's a really big problem at the moment that we don't get the feedback from private sector. What is the main issues why they can't use it, the open data. The main issue is what I have heard from private sector companies is open data quality, and when was the open data updated. Sometimes when we what was the last date? It was kind of 5 years ago, so you can't use it. But I know that real estate companies at the moment are most active users of open data, like when they are planning new buildings and so on. So yeah, we have to make the feedback more like proactive and so on.
Veiko first.
We have some sort of the problems or orientation problem with this new portal or all the thing from one point of view, and this is a customer's point of view. Frankly to say, this is built according to the compliance requirements coming from Europe, and this portal need to be in single information point in the terms of the Digital Governance Act in Europe, and therefore it's these sums, this money is spent, this European money is spent to fulfill these requirements. What we are quite smart. We also want to have some good services into this portal, and we are working on this. But this task we took to put together one thing, which is the list of the registers in the one hand, which we have already in place, and the open data portal, old open data portal in another hand, is quite a large task. We need to build the new meta model for this, and this need to be constantly developed, because this descriptions are from the different branches of the economy are different. Like health data is differently described than the mobility data and so on. And therefore we need to work quite hardly with these meta models and without it is not truthworthy to use, and this is the work we need to do, and what we need is somebody who is doing this. This means organizational model, and our solution for this is we need to create in agencies, we call them business data stewards, who are responsible for this and organizing in the agencies this description from the first step, which is basically the data entry or something like this. It's not done yet, but we are doing this to achieve the tasks.
Okay, Andres, you wanted to say something? And then I'm going to ask a question from Dan.
Yeah, I wanted to make your mood a little bit better. That like from a kind of looking at from a wider sense internationally, then if you think that in Estonia the private sector doesn't use a lot of the open data, then it's because that data is already available elsewhere.
Yeah.
And like good example is that there's very few countries in the world that have a national business registry. There is a very few countries in the world that have a population registry. Most countries in the world don't know about the people that live in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that information here is solved. Like it exists, the problem is solved mostly. And the question is that, in some other countries, actually open data is used for this type of solving that type of a problem. With different means for solving that problem. So the question rather is that what is the nature of the added value of the open data in this environment here? That would, let's say, what is the problem that it's solving that is in other ways already not available in this raw format and integratable directly into the different business processes. So.
Okay, I mean, what problem is it solving? Not necessarily know, because that is the logic of open data, that you put it out and someone actually has a problem that this data might sort of help to solve. But I want to, of course, but this is a sort of a huge question. I mean, comparing countries and this maturity level, they know to understand actually where's the case for open data here. But I want to bounce a question to Dan. I mean, what was discussed here a bit is essentially sort of comes back to the bare minimum. How to ensure with some sort of feedback mechanism that the one who is producing it is actually making it so valuable that someone actually wants to use it. And we heard in the previous panel that essentially some sort of feedback, thank you, and a notification that, see, we used your data to publish this paper, for example, would already go a long way. But when I think of I mean, that's sort of nice, but it still doesn't really comply anyone to really improve the standard, because the best feedback mechanism for me is money. What's the feedback mechanism that would actually make this thing work? Meaning the data owner who not necessarily doesn't need to put it out there or doesn't need to do the additional effort to make it high quality. And the customer who basically, if you get a free product, sorry, you cannot demand too much. I mean, you can ask, but you cannot really demand.
The maturity model thing comes first for me. And I go around also today earlier before coming to this conference. I was with Professor Vilo on the radio explaining maturity models of countries and how it makes them better candidates to adopt AI, for example. So for me, the storyline is exactly that the organizations which want to be efficient, then they have to do this data cleanup at some point. In Estonia, I think the tax authority is a good example. They've become very efficient, and it helps them. There's multiple things that it helps them. They have been able to close down offices. They get a lot of things done online. It's reduced costs, increased revenues. We don't lose so much on value-added tax fraud anymore, so forth and so forth. But a lot of this other part comes also down to the modality on how you give the data out. If you give out statistical tables, cubes, in whatever form they're formatted in, then those usually are static in the sense that you look at them, you use them to derive something new or to make a decision. Again, and possibly I might be doing injustice to somebody, but the other modality for open data is API based, and there, if it's live data, it gets more interesting and you can build more business around it in a way. In that case, also in Estonia, I think there are several products built around the business registry and so on. So that works. That's a good showcase. Land cadastre and so on. So the feedback loop. Money is, yes, a good one, but the other part is you have to push this along. The skills are important. What Veiko said, you're trying to curate all this. You're trying to teach everybody to do this properly, these business data stewards. They have to know how to do all this. And the question is, how many can we fit in 1.3 million people in Estonia, how many good ones come out of Tartu University, it comes down to numbers. At the same time, other people are saying that yes, we should teach more AI people because that will bring added value and increase GDP. So again, there's choices to be made. And at some point, even though my heart is often against centralization of power and data, then in Estonian settings, I would actually say that, yeah, maybe some things are best done where they are done well, meaning, like, for example, Statistics Estonia.
May I have a comment on this to the audience? As you heard, Dan is very concerned about the maturity models. And this is a very practical question for me and for all Estonia. Do we use these maturity models in our data governance framework or we don't? I had a meeting. I'm leading the meeting and I'm writing this new framework, and I have a meeting in the next week, and we will decide about this. Do we take this maturity model approach or we don't do it? Currently, I am not very sure that due to the organizational burden, not just that maturity model is good or bad, but due to the organizational burden which come with this, do we take it? And this is how we practically work, and this is by my mind the very, very good sort of the dialogue or discussion in our small society, how to solve the questions. I'm taking seriously what you're saying right now currently. I'm thinking about it, and perhaps we're making a decision to take it.
Very good, that's impact.
For me, the point is that, again, both us and I think as well Nortal, we build e-governments around the world. So we're comparing them. Some of the Estonian technologies we're trying to export take root better, some don't. I think in many places, the maturity level we have for using data does not exist at all. And it's not just because population registry or business registry.
Okay, there are questions in the audience as well, so let's open it up a bit. Stefan, you go first.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Stefan Dilovic, and I'm doing PhD, finishing it up on cross-border digital public services and European interoperability and interconnection. In regards to the maturity models and the question whether it's used or not, personal opinion, just sharing, is that, as they say, that any model is not a real picture of where it should be, but it gives a certain idea on where should we go, in a sense, and to the lead to the data governance and better levels in this aspect. So in that context, I would like to touch upon the skills of the people, especially that now AI and Gen AI is coming over and more, which is at the end going to probably be more skillful than the time to teach the other opinion. So how do you see the skills, exactly what Dana has mentioned, digital skills aspect with the current ongoing innovation in the cases, etc.?
We're basically dividing the data governance specialists into the two branches: business data stewards and technical data stewards. And then this is the very, very broad view. We can't link them, but there are exceptions. For example, as I earlier said to my colleague, that in the agencies which are very technically orientated, like this IT agencies, there might be linkage between them, but otherwise we are more looking on the business data stewards, the business people, because the data is everywhere. Business people need to understand data, need to improve their skills.
Just a question to Christian on that as well. I mean, when you do those, let's say you govern that area, do you set certain criteria for those data owners as well, that they need to have a specific skill level which they need to match in order to make that data actually usable? You provide, of course, the portal, but what's in there that really matters?
Of course, they have to follow the data governance standards that statistics are updating. And when we talk about the stewards, I don't know how old it is, but Digiriigi Akadeemia is a website where everyone can study actually data science and so on. So when we talk about government agencies. So then it must be courses for providing new information how to make data usable in their agencies. And of course, when we talk about open data portal, we have to make more. We have to make more cooperation with the private sector and another government agencies who are not using at the moment the open data portal.
Okay, Carsten had a question, but you want to...
The generative AI thing is heavily overhyped in the public sector. What the good use case is, obviously every government says that they will embrace it. And if you want to sell a product, then it will have to be AI compliant. That's for sure. Again, but that's the business side of it. From a use case side of it, large language models inherently, they output something which comes from randomness. Question is, what business processes are there where you need so much randomness? So generative AI is excellent for making toys. Colorful things, beautiful text. But the point where it again brings business value to a government, we're still looking for them. Yeah, that's again. There's areas of AI that work marvelously, like all the visual detection. This is wonderful stuff and works already before LLMs.
Carsten.
Yeah, thank you. I think there was the dialogue about the value. If you look to it from the angle of the cross-border dimension, because if you look to the once-only principle or to the business register information, I think there's a lot of value in it. If you look from another member state, for example, you need valid information about the company, about the person, and you have to have access to not outdated data. And I think the value is that you can make contracts with a company and the person that is reliable and that exists. And I think there are huge studies on the value that are created. I think there are some things related to the first company directive, to the directive of interconnection of business registers. And also I think there are several things about the once-only principle.
Yep. Spot on, in my opinion. I mean, overall, I think that European Commission is dumping a lot of funding into data interoperability overall, the cross-border digitalization agenda. And lots of people, me including, somehow believe that this is actually the future of Europe overall. That Europe is not a federation, but being between, well, practically speaking, between US and China, then there's the idea of a single digital market now for, what is it, past 20 years or so? What is it? Something like that. I mean, what does it really mean? Where do we set the goal? And the goal has to be, in my opinion, that it's bloody easy to establish a business in Chicago and then continue expanding that business in New York. But it should be also as simple to live and do business, start it in Tallinn and then do that in Germany or in London, or okay, not anymore London, but you get the point. Mm-hmm. And it should be, yes, but let's not make it so political. But that's the idea that smart utilization of data governance that can tie borders together into something, a bigger idea, and create a bigger market. I think that should be an idea of it. And also continuing, perhaps just for a second on it, is that the best use cases of data governance typically are always if it has a very good goal. And lots of people talk about the data quality and data governance. And typically the best examples when somebody fixes the data quality is if it's tied to a very specific business goal. Why, for example, Estonian Tax and Customs Board is a prime example of utilization of data for the benefit of the society is because they have very specific goal why to do it. Same for healthcare. One of the best examples of a nationwide level of jump in data quality in different government registers has been the registry-based census. There is a very specific cost benefit of why to fix data in different registries. But if somebody just, let's say, let's hire hundreds of people to somewhere fix in a registry some type of data, it's not connected to any economic or a wider socioeconomic goal. So it's very hard to do it bottom up.
Done.
From again, on paper, I agree with you 1000% if that were possible. Question is again, where's the business model? Where's the value? These identities for businesses and people. Enrolling, there is not much money in there. It's a commodity. It's minimal margins. It's basically and whether those IDs are interoperable. If you want them to be interoperable, likely they have to be publicly provided. For businesses, it's somewhat more interesting because there's a number of private companies that provide business registry functions. You can check in other countries. It's not necessarily the government that's responding. There's somebody else. There's startups who have pulled together, scraped together data to figure out what a company is. In Estonia, you can use a government backend and get some actual business registry, sort of more trust into it. But elsewhere, this is not always the case. Again, where's the business model of making this service happen? And again, in my heart, I'm an idealist. I also want data to be cleaned up. I want federated services. But at all points, I'm trying to figure out in my head where is the economic incentive for building this properly.
Veiko.
What we are achieving or what we are doing is we're looking on the two dimensions. One is all European data spaces movement. There are different data spaces. They are creating the data spaces. But on the other hand, we try to figure out, can we turn back our registers in the way that some of them will be sort of the base registers, because we don't have the base register concept in legal concept. And this is somehow the problem. For example, Denmark has, Norway has, Sweden has. Not everybody has. But and if we will achieve that we have a sort of the base registers, we can take some kind of data object. Let's say the person is data object or car or whatever they are, and we can more or less not aggregate, but put together the data elements for this data object and use this data object as a sort of a master data thing, and then use better these sort of the objects in Estonia and also cross-border. This is the idea, but of course the legislation doesn't support it currently in Estonia, and therefore.
Actually, I have a question to Mihkel. When I read the title of this panel, and I thought about, are we going to talk about moving research results into practical services in here, or are we? Is this in scope?
I don't understand the question.
Okay, think about. We did a project with you back in the day, AI in e-government. So the idea was you build nice models from all the data you get, and then you want to move these models into practical e-government services. But the legal basis is suddenly.
Good that Ott Welsberg has left. He actually commissioned that project, so he cannot.
Yeah, I hoped he would stay.
Yeah.
Post-mortem.
It's a pity because actually. Discussed that project yesterday when we discussed. There was some event about trans and interdisciplinary research. I would say from the government point of view, we were commissioned to do a study how to fix a problem. Mm-hmm. In the end, there's a bunch of researchers and a company also involved, where actually I would say a bunch of researchers from your company basically. Everyone did individual work. Everyone actually succeeded in their work to a certain degree. They got published, they got access to data. The problem wasn't solved.
Mm-hmm. 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 But I think we got somewhere with it. We actually we got blueprints on how to build the new models. I think there were learnings. I was just hoping that maybe there would be Ott here today to explain how these have been now deployed in so many XYZ government services.
I think in Dan's defense, that's the nature of the projects in this field. But there is a lot of experimentation.
Yeah.
There is a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
You need ambition to go further.
Yes. So it's
But I would say one learning of this obviously was as well that actually how to get partially, let's say, some of the results were that how to achieve, for example, in healthcare ways how to really quickly and relatively efficiently test algorithms and models developed by other people based on standardized data, so you could do it faster later on. Essentially, this type of logic, this pipeline was tested, etc. Live products. None of those ever happened. Partially, yes, I blame the lawyers as well, but that's also partially maybe a question of how we didn't manage to talk the language that lawyers talk. To basically say that you built a technical example, lawyer took a look at it, compared it against the norms, and said, to some said yes, to others said no.
Yeah, but again, we came up with designs which they could deploy without breaking the norms. You don't benchmark an individual person against AI or the data model you built from the statistics. You apply it to a group. Instead of going to a single house, fearing that it will burn down because the AI model told you so, you hit everybody in a 5-mile radius, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Or you build a model based on population data in a closed environment, but you take the model coefficients out, and then you do a calculator where everyone can sort of benchmark themselves against it. You have a nice model
autonomously, but that doesn't give that much value in a population scale. So again, if I'm the government, I want to make use of AI, then I need to make decisions. I need to see where I put my scarce resources. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that was a slight detour. But I wanted actually, because I thought that the mood is getting a bit too dark here. It was a bit better in the last panel.
I'm desperately working on making jokes.
Yeah, thank you for that. Because I wanted to introduce a nice bright subject of trust. Put down your phone.
No, I have research results to cite. I need to actually look at the numbers.
Okay, because actually, it's a non-negligible problem actually when you want to think about how to turn open data into commercial products as well. Because let's be honest, then you're gonna hit this trust question big time. Why should I give access to my data, even though, let's say, when it's open data, this not necessarily doesn't sort of arise, but government collected data, money has been spent in collecting that, in making it available in high quality. Now someone takes this free stuff, turns it into a product. I, as an individual whose data point might be in there, even though obviously in pseudonymized or anonymized version, maybe even not like that in an aggregate, I'm a data point that ended up in an aggregation, something like that. But I might actually sense that the agreement between me and the government is a bit violated, because now this data essentially is sold on the market to a company that makes a profit out of it.
Maybe you can make it subscription based. You can collect money actually.
What? Explain that idea, please.
You mean you don't have to make the data sets free for everyone?
Okay.
So you can put a license on it.
They download it once and then stop paying, as you do with Netflix after you binge watch that series.
It's another problem.
But basically, it does create those trust questions, and it's an important thing, because I was thinking what Todd Welsberg was saying, that trust is like varies, etc. But that's definitely one thing. Because why I don't necessarily like open data too much is, the number one problem when you want to analyze behavior is self-selection. Meaning that people the ones making their data available or answering your service or whatever are the ones who, because of particular attributes, are more likely to do so.
Yes.
And they differ from the general population. And I don't have a distribution of trust in the population, so actually I'm always biased. And I want to get rid of that bias. The best way how to get rid of that bias, when everyone agrees to give their data, meaning these random samples work because they are truly random, not biased based on inherent trust in terms of the respondent on giving the data. How we fix that problem?
First of all, it's a generational thing. I really wanted to ask Ott about what's the sample size of his survey that he was citing. There's a survey N equals 3,300 something, Veronika Kalmus and various foreign researchers on trust against institutions. And I think that one of the key takeaways was that in Estonia, for example, slightly elderly generation have more distrust towards the government, younger generation have distrust towards the companies. And this is a teaser trailer from a study now, which is not yet published, but this is a study among gene donors, 500,000, and non-gene donors, 1,000. And the question was asked, which kind of organization are you willing to share your health and genomic data with? Self-selection, very important. Gene donors already elected to share their data. And here, obviously, with hospitals, it's ridiculously high, 90% something among gene donors, but among non-gene donors, it's instantly like 10 points lower. And obviously, hospital, you share your data with because otherwise you might die. So it's very sad otherwise. But the bias gets bigger when you talk about research institutions. If you already gave your data to a genome center, then 40% think that they are totally willing to share with research institutions. 19 among the non-gene donors have the same level of trust. Pharmas have ridiculously lower levels already. And the Estonian government institutions, for whatever reason, are even worse than pharma companies. Okay. N equals 1,500. Survey done last year before the Pere Sihtkapital incident and redone afterwards. So there will be a paper explaining how the sentiment changed.
That's pretty unique to Estonia. I mean, it's practically the opposite in the Western world.
Yep.
That's
really interesting. I mean, that's an interesting piece of information to note. Veiko?
The trust can be looked on from the 2 point of views. One is that I'm trusting to you the data, I'm giving to you the data, and I'm trusting the data you have. And in general, in the human history, as historian, I know it from the ancient Greek to ancient China and so forth, is the trust of agency. In ancient Greek, they put the records into the temples and in Rome into that tabularium and in archives and things like this. And basically the trust of the institution, which is specially built to be trusted. Mm-hmm. And another thing is trust of the source. Trust of the document or whatever. There are a lot of questions. And this kind of research trust is both of them. Trust of the institution, it is not trust of the publisher more or less sometimes. Trust of the institution and also the trust of the source. And we have, at least in social sciences, very long tradition of sort of historical economy and population studies and things like this. And this source criticism is very, very elaborated subject. It's not, we are not teaching this now, but be sure it has been discussed from the beginning of the 19th century up to the middle of the 20th century. And even I have studied source criticism at the Tartu University in history department. And when we go to archives, I know how to do it. Also, the trust of this Kirchenbücher. These are the what is the name of the source in English? The parish registers, and things like this. And we did some special research with this, and therefore, by my mind, this trust question need to be addressed to the society like a more calmly way, not just this kind of sociological questions.
Again, I feel that I might have struck a nerve. This was not the intention. The point was to sort of say that, again, for me, institutions, how they are built in a democratic society like Estonia, I do trust them. Although, if we look at what's happening on the other side of the ocean, a lot of institutions are being dismantled right now. So, Veiko, I trust you well. I don't know who comes after you.
Nobody knows.
Okay, that's a nice way how to conclude the panel. I was also thinking of giving you a time to say a slogan, but how do you feel about it? Yeah, okay, people are nodding. So let's start. I mean, we have 1 minute left to wrap it up. Everyone gives their central takeaway from a very wide discussion which we had. Please.
We can build a lot of cool things in Estonia if we do a proper risk analysis, and we'll be better after that.
Christian.
I think we have to move forward from the legal aspect, because legal aspects are quite disturbing sometimes when we talk about open data use cases and so on.
They are the only aspects.
All right, Andres.
I think a lot of the private sector adoption is dependent and will be dependent on the availability of universal like real-time operational data.
APIs.
Yes.
Yeah, we can well trust the stable data like statistics I explained and things like this, but more dynamic or more current data as services or products, we need to find out how we can trust them.
All right, that concludes this panel. Thank you to all the panelists, and please give a nice round of applause as well.